What is a product manager? What are its roles and responsibilities like? How can I become one? If these are the questions which are bothering you and you are interested in entering the field of product management, then welcome to this episode of Zoom with New Age Leaders. In this episode, we'll be interviewing Rohit Jaiswal, who is a senior product manager at Microsoft India. So, let's get started. Hi Rohit, welcome to this show.
Hey Abhinav, glad to be here.
Before we start, let me tell all my viewers Rohit and I came a long way. Both of us were batchmates in IIM Bangalore, and in fact, we ended up in the same job in Kuwait. 6 years post that, Rohit has transformed himself as a senior product manager at Microsoft India. So, Rohit, first question to you is: was there a moment of realization? Why did you think product manager is a career for you? What made you make that decision?
Very interesting question, and yeah, I would love to talk about it. So my background was a typical engineering MBA background. I did computer science and engineering, started working for IBM for a couple of years, and then did my MBA because I didn't want to code anymore. And I was trying to figure out where would I want to go. And there were tons of roles and fierce competition at IIMs, as you remember. And it wasn't much of a choice where we want to go there that point of time. There was consulting, marketing, finance, and product management as well. But I knew very less about product management then, and I joined Alshaya with you. And it was a great job, great place, learned a lot. But while working there as a retail manager, one problem that I was working on was creating a tool for my team where they could track the stock availability. And I built that tool on Excel using VBA. And that was the moment of realization that I want to be building products and in a proper technology company. So that's where I decided, okay, I want to come back to India and join some product roles and go from there. And rest is history.
Wow, glad you shared that story because I kind of advertise this to all the people who are aspiring to change their careers. So, coming to product manager role, having 5 plus years of experience, I know you have worked with startup, you have worked with a gaming company, and now you are working with a tech giant, the Microsoft. Would you define the role of product manager for us?
Definitely. So this is again a question that people generally gets confused, like what exactly a product manager is doing at their company, because you understand the functional roles. A developer codes, a designer creates design, a marketing person creates branding, marketing pitches, or takes product to the market. But what does a product manager do? So a simple answer is product manager is the accountable person for the success of the product. And and if you want to look at your different other roles, there are none of the roles which will say, okay, I'm accountable for overall success of the product. That is where the product manager comes, and the product manager owns the product um, vision, defines the strategy, and defines the product roadmap, and defines what feature they will make the next year and what features they'll release at what point of time. So this is the core responsibility, accountability of a PMS. And that's why they are called like mini CEOs with a small twist there actually. CEOs have a lot of authority also, but PM generally doesn't have any authority. But otherwise, it's similar to leading a cross-functional team and leading them to a particular goal.
While we are on the definition of product manager, I also want to touch upon these terms like project manager and program manager. So it's a bit confusing for me. Can you describe what is the difference so that we are clear?
So currently, program manager and product manager are these roles which are a bit confusing. So there are only few companies that have both the roles, and few companies that have only one. So for
Mhm.
example, Amazon has both the roles, and the typical difference is generally a product manager generally works in a product. There is a proper service or a proper product that you item that you have been delivering, which a customer buys or uses, right?
Mhm.
Whereas the program manager role goes beyond product. It can be something like you would have heard about Microsoft and Geo partnership, right? So that's a program. A program manager might be leading that particular program, and and ensuring that they are defining the success of that program. What would be the success for Microsoft, for Geo, and who are the stakeholders and how to deliver that. So program manager would handle that.
Okay, I think that that is quite clear now. So, going in detail of what a product manager does, can you tell us like what are the steps involved? How does a typical product management cycle looks like for us?
No, that's a great question again. And let me start at the planning level. So a PM
Mm-hmm.
to be an accountable for success of a product, you need to be present on all stages of the product. You start with planning, where you do
Mm-hmm.
all types of research, you create a plan for the year, and then you execute them, right? So let's talk about planning stage. So as a PM, currently we are in a planning stage at my company, Microsoft. We are defining the next year's objective and key results. That's how we define what will be the success. So we follow the OKR paradigm, and we are defining the overall year's OKR. But having said that, a stage before that could be defining the vision and the strategy. So suppose those things are defined.
Mm-hmm.
Now defining objective and key results for a year, you define, okay, let's take an example of a product called WhatsApp, which
Okay.
everyone would know, I think, and
Yeah.
will be very relatable. So suppose I'm a product manager of WhatsApp, and I'm defining the yearly plan of WhatsApp. Now I have to think about where the product is today, where the WhatsApp product is today, where I want it to be after a year. And suppose the area that I want to touch upon is everything is going fine, but I want to touch upon payments. I
Mm-hmm.
want to launch payments this year because I want to take over emerging economies. I want to ensure there are a lot of users who could do the same payments which they have been doing in other local platforms like Paytm or some other platform that might be there in, say, Indonesia or other places. So now WhatsApp wants to take that particular area as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's strategy. The OKR could be releasing the objective could be releasing the payments feature and achieving certain market share. Key result would be some number of user base, right? So that could be an OKR that we define in the beginning of year. But how would we achieve that? That is uh, there we have to define a product roadmap. You have to release different features in that particular overall high level payment feature, and it could be like starting a payment, uh, completing the payment, integrating with the local payment providers, the banks, and everyone. In India, it will be UPI. So, so all those features will be there, and that will be part of roadmap. You will define when to do what,
Okay.
and then at the end, you have defined high level product roadmap. You'll go
Mm-hmm.
even next level where you define exact features. For example, how would the screen look like where a user will initiate a payment,
Mm-hmm.
right? How the design would look like,
Mm-hmm.
and how's the overall end-to-end user flow would look like. So that is all will come into feature specification. The product manager is responsible to write those specs.
Okay.
And yeah, I think once you do that, developers develop it, and you stay with the developer where you are there. If you have to prioritize something, you have to make the feature smaller,
Mm-hmm.
something that people call it as a minimal viable product. So
Mm-hmm.
you define, prioritize different aspects in that feature, and then you release the feature. That's go to market strategy. You work with a marketer now
Mm-hmm.
and define the branding of that and how you'll message that product. So you see that you started with planning, you executed with it, developed the product, and then you went towards go to market. All these aspects, PM is responsible in, or I would say accountable. Like all the functions are responsible to actually do their own job in different aspects, but PMs are accountable for all these aspects and successful release there.
So that means it's like overall ownership of the product life cycles, right from the planning stage, the designing, the testing, and the release, and then the feedback loop, I guess. So it's
Definitely.
kind of a mini CEO wherein you are involved and you are supervising each and every step, and you will be leading a team of different skill sets. Like in the planning, you need a different skill set. In designing, you'll be working with coders, and in marketing or release, you'll be working with all the channel partners. So indeed, this is a very responsible career, I would say. That also reminds me of my management course, wherein we did a lot of this kind of project life cycle or a product life cycle. Coming to this particular question, which people ask for the product manager, is MBA necessary? And I don't want to stick to that. I want you to tell me what are the skill sets required for the good product manager and the qualifications, and if you want to maybe recommend something, two or three things for a young graduate who wants to build a career in product management.
So, a great question again, and yeah, I think short answer is MBA is not necessary.
Okay.
To become a PM, you have to have some certain skills, and six to be precise. One is visionary. You have to be able to set the vision of the product. You have to be creative so that you can actually set a great vision. You have to be a problem solver. So your first principle thinking should be great. Your
Mm-hmm.
communication should be really awesome, precise, so that you are able to convey whatever you have thought about, whatever vision you have thinking. And while you're communicating, you should be able to generate energy. You should act like a leader at that point of time. So leadership skills, fifth one. And the last one, which is sometimes becomes really core of that, is technical skills. You have to at least have an understanding of how everything works, how your product is working, and what are the major trends in the technology these days. So, like the basic thing that you should know, like how internet works, and then depending on what product you're developing, what is the latest trends there, augmented reality, what's happening there, if you are in that phase. So all these things you have to be aware of. So these six skill sets. So employers basically like to test all these things, all these six skills, right? They don't
Mm-hmm.
have any litmus test to do that. So that's why they're gonna look for your qualification, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
where they look for if you have a technical background plus an MBA. That's the cookie cutter qualification that every recruiter looks at. But that's not the only thing that is needed. Like, or I would say that's not the necessary condition or
Okay.
qualification. There are exceptions. Exceptions are startup founders.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, mini CEO. Like, if you have actually been a CEO or that executive level role you have done, it means you know all the aspects of a PM, and that's again a good qualification for a PM, being a PM. Also, past PM experience is another thing that people look at. If even if you don't have the MBA or you weren't a CEO, but somehow you became a PM in some startup.
Mm-hmm.
That's also how people generally justify becoming a PM at a big company. So those are
Mm-hmm.
also really good tactic people employ. Become a PM at a startup and move from there. I did that.
Mm-hmm.
Though I had the background, I was a engineer and MBA, but still I had to go with
Mm-hmm.
that because cracking a big company is difficult.
Okay. So I think that if you have to summarize, you need to have a technical background. MBA is preferred, not mandatory but preferred. And if you are lucky enough to get a PM experience, in you can start with a startup and then you can apply to a big firm. That should be recommended path for any person who wants to get into a product management, I would say. Now we all are facing this unprecedented way of working with COVID happening, work from home lifestyle, and everything is on remote. What are your views on that? How would COVID impact the role of product manager?
COVID has actually made things tougher because the PMs generally doesn't actually do those functional things. They have to motivate different functions to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that they understand the feature, they understand the product vision, and they are able to execute on it. So that's the key challenge here. That communication has become challenging, and because of the remote setup, and that's where the PM has to be very precise while they're communicating, and at the same time, they have to generate energy remotely. So that's a challenging thing, and that's where PMs will be using tons of tools, and you'll see that the meeting tools like Zoom, Microsoft Teams have become really friendly. They have coming up with amazing features like backgrounds and sharing screens and lot tons of different things, and that's where we'll see a lot of more communication friendly things gonna happen in future.
Hope so. Continuing with the recommendation for the new graduates, what would you recommend, like any books or reference material, or because these days there are a lot of podcasts and influencers, so I'm sure there would be some who's who in this industry. So would you bother to tell us few of those?
For people who are aspiring to become a PM, they should definitely start with cracking the PM interview. That should give you some basic understanding of what it takes to be a PM and what PMs have been doing in different industries. So that book summarizes it really well. Second book is if you are going for actually solving product interview problems, Decode and Conquer is a great book by Lewis Lynn.
Mm-hmm.
And to have some basic tech primer, you have Swipe to Unlock by Aditya Gashe.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some good product uh, podcasts. The one which, if you have to go through only one, I would recommend Master of Scale by Reid Hoffman, who's the co-founder of LinkedIn. There are some great YouTube channels also. The Product School is one where a lot of great leaders, a lot of different companies come and talk about how how product management is there in their companies.
Again, like this questions comes every time in our mind that I've learned from all these books and I've become a product manager, but who will hire me? What kind of a career path it would look like what is 10 years down the line look like for a product manager? So could you elaborate on that, like?
Almost all the companies, tech companies these days, who have either a product which they sell or a service which they sell, they have a product manager role available. And the top companies are Microsoft. Like you should definitely think about joining Microsoft, a great company. FANG, the acronym FANG, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google. So all these companies are really, really great companies, have great product management culture there. What would be the future of product manager? So as we discussed, PMs are mini CEOs, right? They are accountable for the success of their product, and they can actually scale to success of the whole company and become CEO as well. And the great examples are Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai, Marissa Mayer. These people evolved from being a product manager to a CEO of the company.
Uh, I think after mentioning these three names, it becomes absolutely crystal clear in the minds of the young people where they want to become, and we need not need any more convincing. So, with that, I conclude this episode. Thank you so much, Rohit. You have been a gem and has enlightened and motivated us on the path of product manager.
Thanks, Abhinav. Thanks for inviting me to this platform. And anyone who's watching this, you should definitely subscribe Abhinav's channel. There are tons of great videos. It's just good to watch these videos and learn something new every day. So thanks and stay safe.